In this episode, we will see how to implement a quick saving and loading solution, which is kind of relying on the structure that I gave you in the minimalist structure episode. This is something which is very simple and will not be suitable for some kind of games. For example, if you want to handle multiple save files, that will not do, so you will need another save and load video for that. Here we are really considering that the player starts the game and the game will load the only save file available, and it will actually not allow the player to create a new save file yet. So you will see that in this episode you will have a lot more features in the project than what was in episode 2. That is, if you watch the playlist in the order of the playlist. It was actually filmed very late after the episode 2, but the content of this episode doesn't rely on anything post episode 2 and can be implemented as soon as episode 2. Basically, if we want to save and load, what we want to do is to replace this data value or initialization with one from a file that we have saved. In order to load something, you first need to save it. Fortunately, Godot has a very cool way to save resources, which is exactly why we have created resources. So we're going to start by creating a save method. But in this save method, all we have to use is the resource saver from Godot and to specify where we want to save it. So we're going to create a variable for the save path, and then we will be able to create that resource saver call. So we make a constant. Actually, it can be a variable, but here I specify that this is a constant because it will never change. Here what we want is user semicolon slash twice and something like save.tres. For the save file name, you want either something that ends with tres or res. So that's for resource, and T is for text resource. If you actually want to be able to read and edit your file, you want tres. So the path is set. We can now call the resource saver and use the save method from it. So we need two things, a resource to save and a path. So the resource is data and the path is path. That's it. That's all you have to do to create a new file on your disk that will save the data of the player. Technically, you can call this method anywhere in the code to say that you want to save at this specific moment. What you can do if you want a simple way to implement a quick saving that works 99% of the time, you just want to use the exit tree method on the root of your game. This means that when this node is gonna be deleted, removed from the tree, it will do something before it leaves. And here that something is gonna be save data. In other words, when you close the game with regular means, which means that it didn't crash, you will be able to save when the player leaves. Otherwise, you can have something like a timer that will save every 5 minutes or something. That's up to you to see this kind of feature. That's for the saving part. Now we actually want to be able to load what we have created. So here we're just going to use a load data function, which will return a data object which comes from a file that it read. The thing is that there will not always be a file. For example, when you create a new game, you start the game for the first time, there will be no save file yet. In that case, we just want to return a new object of data which is empty. Now we will take care of the situation where the save file exists. So we want to check if the resource loader has the method exists, which helps us to know if a file exists. So we want to know if the file at the path, which is capital letters, exists. And if it does, we want to do something specific. That something specific is to return the loading of that resource. So this method allows us to either load a file or create a file. Well, not really create a file, but either load a file or create a new data object if there's no file. So that's pretty much it for the loading part now. We just want to make sure that when we initialize our data here, we load the data, which will tell us either we load something or we create something new. And that's it. That's all we have to do. We can now start the project, do some things like create a few crystal dusts, close the game, start the game again, and you will see that the crystal dust is still here. This is how we make the simplest save and load in Godot. I hope that was useful and you were not too confused by me using future code, because technically it shouldn't be confusing. And yeah, I will see you in the next video of your choice.